This video is part of a series on experiences of the Enneagram from the 27 subtypes. I'm aiming to interview people of each subtype, so you get to hear and experience what those different voices and life experiences sound like. I hope you enjoy. So for this video, I'm going to be asking myself some questions, interviewing myself from the Self-Preservation 6 perspective on my experiences of the Enneagram. I hope you find it helpful. So when did I first hear about the Enneagram? Well, it was late 2017. I was at a Christian leaders intensive and made friends with another Christian leader, and we connected on Facebook. A few weeks later, I was scrolling through Facebook and saw one of his posts saying that he was a type 1 and he was interested to know what some of his teammates were. And he posted a link to Ian Cron's book, The Road Back to You. So I was intrigued by the title, The Road Back to You. So yeah, I first heard about the Enneagram late 2017. So what's been my experience with the Enneagram? Well, if I reflect back when I first heard about it, I became very suspicious of the Enneagram, especially when I saw the symbol. I, like a lot of people, maybe a lot of Christians perhaps, I looked at the symbol and I thought it was satanic, that it was evil, that it was, spiritually misleading. I was highly suspicious of it. But I was also intrigued as well because the person who posted the post with The Road Back to You was a Christian leader, was somebody that I had heard about and knew of, and was somebody that I respected and somebody that I felt like I could trust, especially theologically. This is somebody who has studied Christian theology, somebody who takes Christian theology very seriously, and not somebody that I would put down as being suspicious in a theological sense. So this was back in 2017. So I was intrigued by the title, The Road Back to You. I was highly suspicious of the Enneagram because of the symbol. And I was also in a dilemma because the person who had posted it, I felt like I could trust. So what's quite interesting about my initial experience of the Enneagram is it's in some ways a little bit telling of my type, which I was later to discover. So yeah, my first experience with the Enneagram was one of suspicion and intrigue because of the context in which I first heard about it through a Christian source, but not just any Christian source. It was a Christian leader and somebody that I respected, and somebody that I felt like did and does take theology very seriously and the Bible and his faith. So I felt a degree of safety in exploring it further, even though I first met with it with suspicion. So that was like, the early weeks. I got Ian Cron's book on Audible and listened to it. And the more I went through the book, the more I became at ease with the Enneagram, because Ian Cron is another Christian leader. And I think after listening to various interviews that Ian Cron was doing on his podcasts, The Road Back to You and Typology, plus also going through the book, The Road Back to You, I became more at ease with the Enneagram. So my intrigue took over my suspicion and I just kept on learning. I don't think a week has gone past since first hearing about the Enneagram where I've not been thinking about it or exploring it or, trying to get my head around it, making sense of it theologically. So I don't literally think a week has gone by in my life where I've not been kind of thinking about the Enneagram in one way or another. So the areas where the Enneagram has specifically been the most helpful for me has been in the area of self-awareness, self-acceptance, inner growth work. And from these three sort of key areas, stages, my relationships have gone deeper, and my ability to receive communication and to communicate has been improved. I'm still on a journey with a lot of things in my life with regards to inner growth work, and I think that is probably true for all of us. I don't think we'll ever get to a stage this side of the grave where we will have arrived at fully grown into our full potential. I genuinely think it's a lifelong journey. And in some ways that might seem disheartening, because what's the point of trying to get somewhere where we're never going to arrive at? But on the other hand, I find it reassuring because it's a lifelong process, and there is grace for the journey. Are there any other areas I would like to share about my experience with the Enneagram? That it took me quite a long time to figure out my type, and we'll probably come to that in a moment. I think one of the main challenges for me with the Enneagram has been being on that journey of trying to make sense of the Enneagram theologically, because like I said, because I started out thinking, is this spiritually safe? And if you go onto YouTube, there are going to be other people, and I think most of them are Christians. There are some Christians out there that, warn against the Enneagram and speak against it. And there are others that are all for it and don't see an issue with it, and everything in between. So I just want to say at this point that, when it comes to Christianity, my worldview and my understanding of it is we're brothers and sisters in Christ. Whilst we might not all agree on everything, I want to just say that I respect every view that is out there. And this video isn't about me trying to convince other Christians that they should use the Enneagram, only because I find it helpful, and many other people, Christians and non-Christians, have found and are finding the Enneagram a helpful tool. I also respect that there are Christians that don't find it helpful and that are not interested. And so all I would say to you is, if it isn't helpful, don't use it. So what was my experience of discovering my type? Well, I thought I was a type 9 to start with. When I went through Ian Cron's book, The Road Back to You, listening to that on Audible, I was listening and I thought, yeah, I'm resonating the most with type 9. So I lived as a type 9 for a while. And then during my spiritual director training, it was reflected to me to look at type 5. So I was exploring being a type 5, and I was going through the different subtypes of type 5, self-preservation 5 or sexual 5. I can resonate. I was resonating with both of those. I was also resonating with self-preservation 9 and the sexual 9. And I was going backwards and forwards for many, many months between 9 and 5. I took so many different tests online. I had various interviews with people. I still couldn't figure out and land on my type. And then through my training with your Enneagram coach, I heard and learned about Catherine Varve's tri-type. And I took one of her online tests and came out as, I think, 964 was my tri-type numbers, 9, 6, and 4. And when the 6 piece came in as possibly my main type, that kind of opened up sort of a big doorway really into me thinking, maybe I'm not a 9 or a 5, maybe I'm a type 6. And I ended up doing a training with Beatrice Chestnut and Paes from their CP Enneagram Academy. And during the solutions course, because I went into it and I was unsure about my type, I had an interview with Uranio, and type 6 came out as my most probable type, and type 5 was really close, and type 9 was as a third consideration. So my Enneagram journey started late 2017, and I went through 2018 thinking I was a type 9. I went through 2019 and 2020 not being able to land on a type 5 or a type 9. And then in 21, when I was exploring Catherine Varv's work and type 6 came into the picture, I was thinking, I think I'm a type 6, and I couldn't land on what subtype I was. That was a whole other journey. And then I had an interview with Ranio, and type 6 came out as my most probable type. So I then started to think, okay, I'm a type 6, and I started looking into the motivations of 6. So fear is a big motivation for type 6, with fear being the passion of type 6. And I could see how fear had and has played a massive role in my life with all kinds of different ways in decisions that I've made, big decisions, and in my relationships. I hadn't even realized how fearful I was, which interestingly enough is quite common for type 6s. When discovering that fear is the passion, they wouldn't necessarily identify as being fearful. I wouldn't have identified myself as being a fearful type. I really wouldn't. And people around me would probably experience me for the most part as being quite calm and a calming influence. So maybe they would even have found it hard to identify the fear in me. But maybe it was more obvious in other ways to other people, perhaps. But what's quite interesting about that is self-preservation 6s are warm and friendly. And when I was hearing about that subtype description from Buonaranio, it really sort of clicked in. I could see, yeah, that's been one of my social strategies, to be warm and friendly, to sort of to protect myself from being attacked. Not realizing that's what I was doing, but on reflection, it was. So I'm really grateful for my training with your Enneagram coach, because it was through my training with your Enneagram coach that introduced me to Catherine Varv's work. I'm really grateful for Catherine Varv's work because it introduced me to the idea that I might be a type 6, where I hadn't considered that before. And I'm really grateful for CP Enneagram Academy, because it was through their material and their process that I was able to land on my type and subtype with type 6 and self-preservation 6. And one of the key traits for the self-preservation 6 is questioning and doubting. Oh my goodness. So yeah, I was questioning and doubting even when I landed with my type, a sort of quest for certainty and not being able to find it. And that even applied to my faith and my relationship with God, questioning and doubting, am I really saved? Does God really love me? And having those questions and doubts are a large chunk of my journey as a Christian. So it's been really helpful for me to see how having the self-preservation 6 type structure has played out in my life in various ways, with myself, with my relationships, with my faith, in so many different ways. It's been really helpful to begin to see it, and so I can work on growing as a result. It brings it to light, brings it out into the open, so I can see it for what it is and begin to make changes to go in another direction. So did I think I was another type or two before landing with type 6? Yeah, so as I've mentioned, I thought I was a type 9 to start with. Then I thought I was a type 5, and I was going between 9 and 5. And then I finally landed with 6. I thought about 2 for a while. And people that have known me most of my life, who know the Enneagram, have also thought I might be a type 2. But interestingly enough, the self-preservation 6 can look like a type 2 because of the woman friendliness piece. The self-preservation 6 can also can look like a type 5, especially as the self-preservation 5, because of there's more of a need to have their own sort of space and time alone, especially with the sexual instinct being repressed. So that has been so true for me, wanting to be alone and time alone. And um and with the 9, I've got a lot of 9s. Obviously, with type 6, there's an arrow to 9, so there's an arrow connection there. So basically, when we first learn about the Enneagram, it's really common for people to identify as maybe one of their wing types. So for me, that might have been a 5 or a 7. So interesting that the 5 was there as a consideration for me. They could identify as one of the arrow types. So for a type 6, that would be 9 and 3. Interestingly enough, I thought I was a 9 to start with. And also, I've got a lot of 9s in my life, a lot of 9s that are close to me. So there's like a 9 sort of overlay in my, in me growing up, and in my close relationships. So it's probably no wonder why not only did I over identify with the unhealthy movement to type 9 as from the type 6, but I've got a lot of 9s in my life. So it kind of made sense why I thought type 9 was a good fit. But also, I think it's worth mentioning at this point, I think one of the reasons why I found it confusing to land on my type is because some of the descriptions for the type and some of the understandings on what a subtype is, and even some of the subtype descriptions, because there are different versions of what a type 6 looks like, I find it a bit harder to choose, well, which teacher has it right. And maybe this is where the social instinct was coming through for me. The social instinct is in second position for me. And so they're a bit more, the social 6s are more black and white and need a good authority to trust and to follow. And so I was wanting to know, well, which authority, which teacher has the correct teaching of type? And it's interesting actually how that's also played out in my faith as well. Which which theological perspective is the right one? I need to know what the right one is. So yeah, I think basically I can remember my dad saying when I was younger, when I was learning to play the guitar, he said, it'd be quite helpful if you can just choose one role model. If you can just choose one person that you want to model your playing on, and then learn how to play like that person, and then develop your own style from there. So I kind of applied that theory to the Enneagram. I got to the stage where I was thinking, right, well, there's your Enneagram coach, and I'm certified. I became certified with your Enneagram coach. There is Catherine Vov and the tri-type theory and her approach with the Enneagram. There's B and Aranio, CP Enneagram Academy, and they're teaching on the Enneagram, and many others. There's Russ Hudson and his teaching, and all of these different teachers and teachings that I found really helpful. But I needed to kind of just choose one so I can grow in an understanding of just one teaching before being confused with all of the teachings. So that's what I did. I ended up choosing CP Enneagram Academy as my main Enneagram teachers, and I've became certified with them as one of their certified Enneagram professionals. So yeah, and that's not to dismiss all of the other teachings and teachers on the Enneagram that are maybe slightly different or different to CP Enneagram Academy. For me, their teachings on the Enneagram have been the most helpful in me landing on my core type. And whilst they are not a Christian organization, and whilst they don't necessarily teach the Enneagram from a Christian perspective, which, to be honest with you, has been a challenge for me as a Christian and someone who takes theology very seriously. And I am really passionate about my faith, and that's a massive part of my life. So that's been the beauty of having a certification with your Enneagram coach who do teach it from a Christian perspective. I appreciate that some people listening to this might identify as a Christian and may find the Enneagram perfectly acceptable and can see how it's a really helpful tool. Other Christians might be watching this thinking, no, it's not a helpful tool. It's, spiritually dodgy, which is what I used to think. And therefore, will probably warn against the Enneagram. And then there's probably people that are watching this video that don't have a faith, or have another faith. And I just want to say, thank you for taking the time to watch this video and to listen to me ramble on about the Enneagram. And I'm just hoping that by watching this video, you're getting an insight into how a self-preservation 6 shows up. So how has knowing my subtype been helpful? Knowing my subtype has been helpful in being able to identify as a type 6, because without the subtype descriptions and the subtype behavioral tendencies, I wouldn't necessarily have been able to identify it as a type 6. So the subtype has been helpful in being able to help me identify my core type. So that's been the first way it's been helpful. But it's also been helpful in knowing that each of the subtypes, so the 27 subtypes, all have growth path or growth suggestions for inner growth work. So for the self-preservation 6, some of the growth work is around growing into becoming more confident and showing up with more certainty, and showing up with, showing up more as an authority, rather than wanting to hide behind another leader, wanting to hide behind another authority. And that has to do with fearing being attacked of some kind, fearing a worst case scenario of being the man in charge, or being the person in charge that then is the one that is getting shot at. I thought, I don't want to be attacked. So yeah, it's been helpful for me to identify my core type first and foremost, and then it's been helpful for me to identify various areas of growth work. And again, this isn't necessarily about being told how I need to grow. It's reflecting what has always kind of been there as a truth. I remember someone saying to me about 20 years ago, she said, "Don't be a worrier, be a warrior." And I was thinking at the time, am I a warrior? Am I thinking, I don't think I'm a warrior. But to be a warrior. And years later, that's kind of stayed with me. And that is part of the growth path for a self-preservation 6, to be more of a warrior, to show up with certainty and confidence. And so here I am on YouTube with my own channel. I haven't arrived at my full confident self. I'm on a journey with it. Would I have started a YouTube channel before inner growth work? I don't think so. That's another way that knowing my subtype and the Enneagram and my type has been helpful. It's been helpful for me to see the areas that hold me back in life. Fear holds me back, has held me back. Fear of what people might think of me. Fear of what will happen in various worst case scenarios on a global scale and all the way down to a personal scale. Fear of the unknown, fear of running out of energy as a self-preservation 6, fear of being judged here online in this video, fear of so many things, or cowardice, being a coward, not speaking up, not speaking my mind for fear of what people might think, or fear of the repercussions. And I think to some point, and maybe this is fear and cowardice in disguise, fear being the passion for type 6 and cowardice being the mental fixation. Maybe this is fear and cowardice in disguise, but I do actually genuinely believe there is a wisdom in discerning what to share, when to share, and who to share it with. So yeah, it's been helpful in self-awareness. It's been helpful in helping me land on my type. It's been helpful for my inner growth work. I don't think I'd be here on YouTube if it wasn't for the inner growth work that I have done in recognizing what holds me back and in working against it. I work with the Enneagram professionally. I work as an Enneagram coach or a spiritual director. I work online via Zoom, and you can click the link below if you'd like to book an Enneagram typing interview with me. I've done many Enneagram typing interviews. I have a tried and tested method in helping you to discover your core Enneagram type in a time in a lot less time than it took me. Um, so had had this interview that I was taught through CP Enneagram Academy, from day one of me learning about the Enneagram, I would have figured out I was a type 6 a lot sooner than I actually did. So if you are interested in discovering your core Enneagram type, or maybe similar to me in my journey, you think you're a type, but you've still got some questions around it, or you would like some certainty on what your core type actually is, then I would love to meet you. Book a typing interview. I'd love to go on that journey with you. Or if you already know your core type and you'd like to explore Enneagram coaching with me, then you can do that. Or if you would like to explore a spiritual direction with me, I would love to hear from you. You can email me at info@enneagramwithmatt.com. Send me an email and we'll go from there. So is there anything else I'd like to add before closing? Yeah, I think the Enneagram, it's like a tool. If you are wanting to grow in self-awareness, you're going to find the Enneagram really helpful. If you're going to want to grow in self-awareness, but to be able to have some suggestions on certain things to work on, then you're going to find it really helpful. The Enneagram speaks to reality. It speaks to the reality of personality. I've heard it said, I don't want to be put in a box. And I think it was Russ Hudson that quoted this, or it was Russ Hudson where I first heard it, something along the lines of, the Enneagram doesn't put us in a box. It helps us to see that we're already in one, and it shows us the way out of it. It's really, really helpful to see what holds us back in our life. So for me as a type 6, fear has held me back. It's held me back in so many ways, relating to my faith, relating to my relationships, relating to so many things. So if you want to grow in self-awareness, regardless of your worldview, you're going to find the Enneagram really helpful, is my personal experience and belief. However, if you're somebody that is not interested in the Enneagram, if it's not working for you, and if you don't find it helpful, then there's no one's telling you that you must, work with it or anything. It's free. We've got free choice. If it's helpful, use it. If it isn't helpful, don't use it. So yeah, I hope that you found my ramblings on my experiences with the Enneagram in the context of being a Christian helpful, and from the self-preservation 6 point of view. I hope by you watching this video, you've had a little taster of an experience of how self-preservation 6 shows up. But I think it's also important to note here that as we grow, we become less like the stereotype of the subtype descriptions, and we become more complex. Not that we necessarily start out as a stereotype. I don't think we do start out as a stereotypical Enneagram type as such, or subtype description as such. We are unique, and we've all got unique experiences, and so they're going to flavor how each type shows up. But when somebody grows, they're going to show up differently in the world. If you have any questions about this video, I would love to hear from you. Email info@enneagramwithmatt.com, and I'd love to hear from you. Yeah, thanks for watching.